Hello and welcome to today's video. Today's video is the book recommendations tag. I came across this tag yesterday and knew I had to do it. So I came across this tag on Loranda Reed's channel. So I will link that down below. And then I had a look and the original tag is from Steph Bohrer. And it's actually only a couple of weeks old, so I feel quite on it. The tags I've been doing recently have been a couple of years old, so yeah, I feel pretty good. I feel like, you know, we're catching back up with what's current. So yeah, the book recommendations tag, there is essentially just a load of questions. There is 15 questions in total and you just answer the questions of a book. It's as simple as that. I will leave both the videos that I've seen down below and I'll also leave all of the questions down below in the description as well. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else that we need to do introduction wise, so let's just get into the questions. Question number 1. A book you tell people is your favourite. Now for me, I think the obvious book that I tell people is my favourite is normally Winterkeep. This is the 4th book in the Graceling Realm series and this book was just amazing. I read it last year now and it is the first book that I created my own tabbing system for. It's the first book that I really thought about. And it's the first book within the Graceling Realm series as well, where we've had multiple plot points from other series come into this. All of the Graceling Realm series, although, you know, you should read them in order, like you should do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3 I feel like you actually could read in any order and not be too spoiled by anything too major. Having this book eventually be one where it's like, no, read the first 3 first if you want to like fully feel like you understand this. And it just meant so much to me at the time that I read it. So in the Graceling Realm series, you essentially, when you're born or within very early life, you have 2 different colour eyes develop. And if you have 2 different colour eyes, this is a physical marking of having a grace. A grace can be absolutely anything, but it is essentially a very specific skill that you just naturally have. You don't need anything else, you don't need to do anything to it, you just naturally have this specific skill. So it could be a grace of killing, it could be a grace of bow and arrow, it could be a grace of seeing in the dark, like just something very specific, and it doesn't really affect the things surrounding it either. So say you have a grace of bow and arrow, it doesn't mean that you're going to be good at like knife throwing or axe throwing or something like that. It just is a very specific grace, and that's a world that we kind of brought into in book 1. Book 2 is a prequel and it takes place in a different part of the world where the rules are slightly different. But yeah, by the time we get back to book 4 we are back on a like linear timeline and it's just so much fun. I had such a good time with it. It's a big book, it's a chunky book, it's like over 500 pages and I couldn't put it down. So yeah, this is a book that I normally would say is my favourite and want to rant and rave about. Question number 2. A book that is your guilty pleasure. Now, for me this is a very obvious one. So if I read this book for the first time now, I don't even think I would like it, but I love it. And this is City of Bones. This is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series. Looking back, I can see that this is probably quite objectively bad. I do know that Cassandra Clare's writing has got better and better as she's wrote more and more books. I have reread this within the last like 3 years. I reread it and I still had an alright time with the reread, but a lot of that was due to nostalgia. But this really is just like a guilty pleasure. I know I shouldn't like this. I know if I read this for the first time now I wouldn't like it. It'd be really cringy, it'd be really tropey. I just don't think I'd get along with a lot of it. But this is also the book and the series that when as a teenager I decided to start like picking up books and reading for myself, and like, you know, every summer we'd go on holiday and we'd go to a couple of bookshops and I'd get 3 or 4 books and those books would last me months. This book is one of the books that I picked up from a bookshop when we were on holiday. It lasted about 3 days. Yeah, I really devoured this. I really had a fun time and honestly I kind of credit this book to making me as like a fully formed brain person, as in like, you know, not a book I got told to read or given as a child and ended up reading. This is like the book that made me as like the person I am realise how much I love fantasy. And like fantasy is named like my most read genre. Like it's what I would consider myself. I would consider myself a fantasy reader. So yeah, it's a massive guilty pleasure. I really don't think I'd enjoy it if I was reading it for the first time now, but I still absolutely love it. Question number 3, a book everyone loved but you didn't. This one's really easy to answer, which is really quite upsetting, but I immediately thought of Six of Crows. I didn't love this. I mean, I didn't hate it, it was just mediocre. I didn't connect with any of the characters in like, not even like a relatability way, but I feel like normally when I read books, even if I don't like characters, I've been in their head, I understand them as a person, and I'm kind of, you know, I could read something not knowing who said or who thought and know what character that belonged to. I never got that with this book. I never felt connected to the characters and I just didn't care about the story. I sludged through Shadow and Bone because I wanted to read that trilogy first, so I had the full complete understanding for this duology. Because although I'd heard that you don't have to read Shadow and Bone first, it helps with the world building, it helps you understand what's going on because it's not really explained in this one. And yeah, I didn't love it. It was a big disappointment. I expected a lot from it. I'd heard so many good things. It was not a good book. I'm very happy that lots of people love it. I want everyone to love every book they read. So if you love this book, I think that's great. Yeah, I can't even say it's because I went in with high expectations, because after reading Shadow and Bone, my expectations weren't even that high. Like, I really don't know. I just didn't vibe with it. I didn't mesh with it. Everyone loves these characters and I just find them quite bland. I don't know. Don't hate on me. But yeah, that is definitely the book I'd pick for that one. Question number 4. A book you read the fastest. Now, definitely a graphic novel. I read quite a few graphic novels, probably 1 or 2 a month. So I'd definitely say a graphic novel. I think it would be a Lore Olympus graphic novel. I picked up volume 1 here, but in all honesty it would probably be volume 2 or 3 of Lore Olympus, just because I feel like volume 1 of a new graphic novel series, you kind of like getting used to the art style and understanding like how to let your eyes follow it, or at least I feel like that when I start a new graphic novel series. So definitely Lore Olympus, because I read these so fast, but it is probably volume 2 or 3. I probably read faster than volume 1, but it really wouldn't be by much, by like minutes, you know. So yeah, Lore Olympus, definitely. This is such a great graphic novel series, it's so good. I know that it strays a lot from the original like mythology and storylines, but I just feel like if you take it for just like the characters as they are in here and follow it, it's so good. It's so like piney, it's so cute, the art style is just absolutely amazing, and I just love the coloration and like how that's used in here. You can just tell that I can open a page, not look at it, I won't look, okay, just from the fact that we've got pink and purple here, I know who we're on about. Open another page, pink and blue, I know who we're on about. Like, just that entire thing of like having that massive distinction between characters, even just in the colours that are used to draw them. I've never seen that done before. Maybe it's more common, like I'm not a massive expert on graphic novels. Maybe there's more out there. If there are more out there, recommend them to me. I know this isn't meant to be like the book recommendations tag of me recommending to you, but if you think there are graphic novels similar to this like art style, do let me know, because I absolutely loved it. It was so good and I read it so quick. Question number 5. A book that deserves more hype. So this is no surprise honestly after question number 1, but my answer is going to be Graceling. This is the first book of the Graceling Realm series, of which book 4 is like my favourite book. So yeah, Graceling. I don't see a lot of people talk about this. I don't see a lot of people who like really rave about this. I've seen it on like a few hauls or TBRs, but I don't see many people talk about it when they're actually reading it. But yeah, and I don't think it gets all the hype it deserves. Like, this is, you know, I personally feel like the amount of people who talk about like A Court of Thorns and Roses, or the amount of people who talk about, well, Red Queen hasn't been talked about in a while now, but talk about that, or Shadow and Bone, like all of these like fantasy series, I don't know why this isn't up there with them. I love it, I think it's great, I would 100% recommend it, and it definitely deserves more hype. Question 6. A book that is becoming a movie slash TV show. Honestly, I don't keep up with this sort of news, but one that I know of and I'm so excited about, I've already picked out the snacks that I'm going to eat when it comes out, is Percy Jackson. This is book 1, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and I assume we'll get a few series and see all the books, but I do believe that the first season is just based off of book 1. Yeah, Percy Jackson, it's becoming a TV show. I'm pretty sure they're finished filming now, so it should be out relatively soon. I don't keep up with it, but I know it's happening, and I'm sure when it gets close to the time that it's coming out, I'll hear about it because I watch book content, so I assume I'll hear about it then. But yeah, also if you live in the UK, Tesco sell blue jammy Dodgers. Yeah, and if you've got a club card, they're half price. So yeah, I've already decided that like when this TV show comes out, I'm going to go to the sweet shop, get some blue bonbons, and go to Tesco and get some blue jammy Dodgers and just pig out and watch it. And if you've read the book, you understand the blue reference, which it has no context at all. It's not a spoiler. There's just a lot of blue food, so yes. Question number 7. A book you've reread the most. Now, I knew the answer to this. I reread a fair bit, but only recently. So there's quite a few books that I've read twice, but there's only one book that I at least know of that I've read 3 times, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I am fairly confident this is the only book I own that like I've read 3 times. I know, I read it when it first came out, like literally like I got this when it was first in paperback, so probably 2015 I'm guessing, and I only read this one and then I went to uni and did not read it all. So some point, was it last year or the year before, I don't even remember, but basically I read this again and read the rest of the series that were currently out. And then this year I had a week where I was really ill and I was really under the weather and I couldn't read and I couldn't do anything. So I reread all of ACOTAR again as the audiobook. So yeah, I've read this first one 3 times and I don't feel like it's necessary. I don't feel like I needed to read it 3 times, but it's just a fun, easy time. It is very much like a go-to series for that quick hit of adrenaline. Having said that, if I were to ever decide to reread it again, I don't know if I'd bother with the first one because there's only a handful of things that are relevant to the rest of the series. But yeah, definitely A Court of Thorns and Roses is the book that I've reread the most. Question number 8. A book from a genre you don't typically read. This was fairly easy. I don't read a lot of contemporary, and even smaller, I don't read a lot of books written in verse. This is a contemporary book written in verse, and that is The Black Flamingo. And I absolutely loved it. It was so good. If you haven't read this yet and you're thinking about it, I would recommend having either the physical book or ebook and also listening to the audio book for this. The audio is so good because the author, Dean Atter, narrates it himself, so that's good. But then if you have the physical copy, I don't know if you can really see, let's find a page where it's obvious. So for instance, like it's very like structured in a way that's interesting, like not every page but there's quite a few, so like I don't want to give anything away and go too far, but I do think there's more of it towards the back. But you can kind of see like there's some interesting structural things, and I would recommend doing both if you are going to read it. But it was so good. I've never read a book like it, and I haven't found a book that has lived up to it since. I've read some that have been similar, either about similar topics or written in a similar way, but none of them have been as good as this. I absolutely loved it. We basically follow Michael in this story. He enters the world with tiny feather eyelashes, and we see him travel from school to college where he discovers his flock. And it's essentially just about our main character coming to terms with his identity, both in terms of like physicality, like the way he looks, in terms of sexuality, he's gay, he's mixed race, and then also discovering drag, which was so much fun to read about. I absolutely loved it. So yes, that is that one. Question 9. A book that deserves all the hype it gets. A very easy answer for this one is All Systems Red, which is book 1 of the Murderbot Diaries, Although in general, like the Murderbot Diaries as a whole deserves all the hype. I don't see many people that don't read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy talk about this, but I do see a lot of people who read those genres really enjoy this and talk about it and hype it up. So it definitely deserves all the hype it gets. It definitely could have more. Like, if you haven't given this a go, please do. It's so good. This is the only series that both me and my boyfriend like absolutely love. So yeah, we've even got a little stamp in the front that says from the library of Jay and Heather. But yeah, this is so good. It is about Murderbot. It is a sec unit who has hacked its governor module and basically doesn't have to follow the company's orders. It can do its own thing. It's on a mission with some scientists. Things maybe start going a bit awry, and Murderbot is going to have to help out and get to the bottom of it. So good. Oh, and also Murderbot itself just wants to like sit there and watch. What is it likes to watch? I can't remember what it is it wants. Sanctuary Moon, is it called? Something like that. But yeah, there's basically just loads of TV shows that it just wants to watch. Like, that's how it actually wants to spend its time, not being this like sec unit. Question number 10. A book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. I've cheated. I'm doing two. There are two books that I would say I recommend when asked for recommendations. I've actually just thought of a third. Do I do the third? Yeah, I'll go grab the third. Okay, so I've now got 3. So it won't surprise you that these are all fantasy books, and I essentially always recommend one of these unless someone is really into fantasy, like high fantasy. Then it's more of a discussion thing, but just as like give me a broad thing, I'll recommend you a book. It's normally one of these 3. So the 3 recommendations I tend to get asked for is a recommendation for children. I actually got asked this yesterday. My mom came and was like, my friend's kid likes to read fantasy, is there something that you should read? And I was like, yes, Amari and the Night Brothers. Hello. Yeah, Amari and the Night Brothers is one of those that I would recommend to anyone, but especially children. But I read this last year. I did not see the ending coming. It was so good. Like, I was so shocked. I can't wait to get my hands on the second one and read that. It's so good. Essentially, Amari's brother has gone missing, but she doesn't believe he'd just run away. And then she comes across a suitcase that has an invitation inside it to the summer camp that her brother used to go to. And when she gets there, she discovers it's actually not just a summer camp. It's actually the Magical Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. And she starts learning about this whole new world that her brother was a part of, and it's so good, and there's so many like characters and people to love. She's got a were-dragon as a roommate. It's so much fun, just like pure fun and enjoyment. But the story and the plot is also really there. I really recommend this one. Then if you are just getting into fantasy, you're not sure if you're gonna like it, you feel like it might be difficult to understand, you're really just not sure, I always recommend starting with Throne of Glass and this entire series in general. This is book 1, Throne of Glass, and I always recommend this one because I think it's such an amazing starter series, because it's not till book 3 or 4 you even start to see the full picture. You get a very slow introduction, you discover things at the same time as our main character, and you know, like in book 1 we just learn a few little magical fantasy things and we just know that, and then book 2 expands further, and then book 3 expands further, and I just think it's such a good fantasy book to start with if you feel like you could be overwhelmed by that. And it's definitely like the series that I would recommend if you're starting out fantasy, because yeah, even if you end up falling in love with the plot and the characters, just being able to like see what parts of the story you're meant to grab to understand the world building, yeah, I feel like this is a really amazing one to start with. It's also a great book. We follow Selena Sardothian, who has been in the salt mines of Endovia for over a year now, and then Captain Westfall offers her a deal. The deal is for her freedom, but will she really get freedom if she goes through with it? And it's all that sort of thing. It's angsty, it's fun. We're dealing with royalty as well. I know loads of people have like books that have got like some sort of royalty in. It's just so good, so much fun. And honestly, like I feel like it starts getting amazing at books 4, 5, 6, 7. But you don't even notice that until you look back. Like just reading book 1's amazing. and then reading book 2, you're like, oh, book 2 was even better than book 1, and then reading book 3, like it just continues. So yeah, I really recommend this series. And then the final one is a series that I absolutely love, and I normally recommend this if you've read a bit of fantasy, you've dipped your toe in, but you're not really sure, but maybe you like other books, you like other reading. And the book that I recommend is These Violent Delights. This is historical, it's fantasy, and it's a retelling. So it's really got lots of bases covered, and I feel like it's a really, really fun one. So this is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet set in 1920s Shanghai. And we follow Juliet and Roma, and Juliet is the heir of the Scarlet Gang, and Roma is the prodigal son of the White Flowers. And it very much follows, you know, the standard Romeo and Juliet structure. This is a duology, so you don't see the entire thing pan out in just this one book. But then there's a fantasy element. And you're also in Shanghai. And the setting's amazing. Like, I'm someone who can see as I'm reading. And, like, this world that was built was just absolutely amazing. So, yeah, I really recommend this one. I think it's amazing. Like, Chloe Gong is fast becoming a favourite author. So, this is definitely one that I recommend to a lot of people. Question 11. A book that has your favourite characters. So I'm going to reuse one of the books from my last answer and say Throne Glass. I'm not going to say any more than that, except for my favourite character is not introduced in that book. It is introduced in a later book in that series, and my favourite character is called Manon Blackbeak. And I can't say more, I don't want to give spoilers, but when I saw that question, she is the first character that came to mind. And I will say, if you haven't finished the series, don't judge me just yet. Don't judge me just yet. I think she's a very well-rounded character, a very interesting character, and a very fun character to read from. I really wish that we had, like, some books from her. Like, I know Sarah J Maas has said, like, Throne Glass is done, it's finished. But I do always wish, like, there's definitely a Manon story hiding somewhere in there. Maybe. Who knows? So, yeah, that's my answer. Question 12. A book you wish you could live in. No, as you may have gathered from this list so far, a lot of the books that I read are fantasy or sci-fi, and me as a human would most certainly just die. I would not last long in any of these books. So the book I decided to go for is a bit of a cop-out, but it's still an amazing answer, and that is Legends and Lattes. This is the only cozy fantasy that I've read, and I don't think I'd die in this world. I think I'd enjoy this world. I think I'd enjoy being surrounded by all of these different people or creatures, or I'm not really sure what you're meant to call them, but all of these different things and, like, magic. The reason I think this is a bit of a cop-out is I actually really hate coffee. Like, the smell of it actually makes me feel quite sick. So, I mean, it is not the perfect world, but out of all the worlds that I think of, out of all the worlds that come up, this is probably the world that I'd have the most fun in and survive in. I could definitely have fun in some of these other worlds, but I'd die within hours or days. So yeah, I'm going with this one. Question 13. A book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. For me, this is a really easy one. I didn't necessarily think I'd hate it because I don't pick up any books that I think I'm going to hate. But a book that I didn't have any expectations for, I went in thinking it'd just kind of fulfill a prompt, is XOXO. I'll put an image up here. Yeah, essentially I read this book last year. I read it via audiobook, and I read it for the sole purpose of fulfilling the X prompt in my alphabet challenge for last year. I needed a book to fulfill the X. So I picked it up. I didn't think much of it. It is about K-pop, which I don't even listen to. It's about music, which I enjoy listening to music, like my type of music, but like I don't particularly enjoy anything else to do with music except for just listening and enjoying what I like. Like, I have no musical talent or aspirations. And overall, just didn't expect a lot from it. Oh, it's also fandoms, which I'm not big into at all. So I really didn't expect a lot, and I really loved it. I had such a great time. I read it in like 2 days. It was so good. It was so fun. I had a really fun time with it. And yeah, it was a book that I was just like, I was expecting nothing from. I was expecting just to read it as a casual read, and I ended up having a really fun time. It's definitely one that I'd recommend. Question number 14. A book that made you cry. This is extremely easy. It's so easy because I'm actually, well, a few months ago I started rereading this book, and I got to the part where the first time round I know I cried, so I put it down. I haven't picked it up in a couple of months, and that book is The Travelling Cat Chronicles. I know the first time I read this, it had such like an emotional impact on me. Like I really like got stuck in it, and I'm trying to reread it. I will finish it. I will finish it. If you want a hint, about here is where you might cry. But yeah, I didn't even have cats the first time I read this book, and like since we moved into this house, like we've got 2 cats. Like I feel like this either could go one way, and because I already know what's going to happen, not hit me emotionally except for just like for the actual story, like I won't actually cry this time round, or it will be even worse because I have cats of my own now. So yeah, this is the answer. Travelling Cat Chronicles. It is about Nana. Nana is on a road trip, but he's not sure where to. All that matters is that he can sit beside his beloved Satoru in the front of his silver van, and essentially Satoru is visiting friends to try and get a new home for Nana, and we explore all of that and all of it from Nana's point of view. So yeah, it's very good, but it's definitely an emotional one. Okay, and then last but not least, question number 15, a book you wish you could read for the first time. Now this answer might actually be a bit surprising, but the book I'm going to pick is Pangea. This is a poetry collection. This, I wish I could read it for the first time for many reasons. So first of all, when I read this, I didn't even know I liked poetry. This is the book that got me into, that made me realise I could properly love poetry. Like I'd read poetry before and like had a fun time, but I'd never really read poetry for pure enjoyment, and I never loved poetry before this book. This book has opened so many doors in terms of like poetry, figuring out what I like, figuring out what I love, figuring out what to read, what not to read, so much. I also didn't read like this physical copy of the book. I read this as a like NetGalley arc, so I just had the ebook for it. And I wish that the first time round reading this book, I'd have tabbed it. I'd have had the physical copy to tab and write down what I thought, and write down what impacted me, how everything went. Because I will 100% reread this. I feel like this is a book that I will continuously reread throughout my lifetime. It was so good. And I'd love to be able to flick through and see what I initially thought. Like me, little, fresh poetry Heather that had no clue what she was on about, no clue what she was doing. I'd love to be able to see what I thought the first time round of this. So yeah, for many reasons I wish I could read it for the first time. When I do reread this, I will probably annotate it and still have fun. But yeah, there's so many reasons. Like this impacted me so much. It really made me think a lot. It just really, it opened a lot of doors. It opened a lot of doors in terms of my reading and figuring out what I like and didn't like, and like a whole different genre and a whole different vibe to what I normally read. So yeah, I feel like I do kind of owe quite a lot to this book, so I do really wish I could read it for the first time. So those were all of the books, those were all of the recommendations. I do hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you had some fun watching it. I hope it wasn't too long. I have actually been talking for quite a long time, I'm realising now. But yeah, that is the entire video. If there's any other tag videos that you have seen and think I should do, let me know down below. If you want to answer any of these questions and let me know what your answers would be, also let me know down below. And yeah, that is it for today's video. Do give it a like if you did like it. Subscribe down below if you'd like to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh god. Sorry, there's a really cute dog. Oh, there's 2 really cute dogs about to go for a walk. Oh my gosh.